Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. I had worked at Virexa Global for 10 years, a full decade. That number felt heavy, like a tattoo across my resume and my heart. 10 years of strategy meetings that bled into midnight. 10 years of dry eyes from reading contracts no one else dared to touch. 10 years of building relationships and quietly saving deals. I wasn't a name on the wall, but I was the glue no one noticed until it came undone. So when I got the invitation to the recognition gala, my stomach actually fluttered. An actual orchestra, champagne towers, gold-accented invitations embossed with my name. It felt surreal. They were celebrating me. Finally, my team had whispered that I was a shoo-in for the upcoming VP of Strategic Partnerships role. And I had just signed a $63 million contract with Encorvia Tech, the biggest deal in the company's entire history. I wore the dress I'd been saving for something special. Floor-length navy silk, subtle sparkle. I even curled my hair, painted my nails, and borrowed my sister's heels. I stood in the mirror and practiced smiling. Not too proud, not too meek. Just right. After all, this was the night my decade of loyalty paid off. The ballroom was stunning. Chandeliers dripping like icicles, waiters with trays gliding between white linen tables, and a stage lit with soft amber light. The VP of Communications gave a long, flowery introduction. A cornerstone of integrity, a visionary, and a closer of unprecedented magnitude. And then he said my name. Applause. Real applause. I walked onto the stage, smiling so hard my cheeks ached. The CEO, Mr. Brennan Holt, waited center stage, beaming. We'd spoken only a handful of times over the years, mostly when I was assigned to his pet projects. He always seemed polite, detached, too important to remember names. But tonight, he remembered mine. He handed me the glass trophy, etched with the words, "For Excellence in Global Strategy, Mia Caldwell." Cameras flashed. I felt weightless. He leaned in for the obligatory cheek kiss, the kind that never lands. But instead of retreating, he lingered just long enough to whisper, "Your resignation letter is under your chair. It's already valid." My brain stuttered. What? The room was still clapping. My smile held. My fingers gripped the award like it was the only solid thing in the room. I glanced subtly down, and sure enough, under the white Chiavari chair where I had been sitting, there it was. A cream envelope with my name on it, already torn open. Inside, a resignation letter. Typed, signed, effective today. No signature from me, just my name, forged. My heart thundered in my ears, but I didn't flinch. I smiled wider, bowed slightly, thanked everyone with a voice that didn't sound like mine. It wasn't a celebration. It was a burial of my career, of my voice, of my decade. I stepped down from the stage and walked back to my table, each step a performance. Champagne was poured. People congratulated me. I thanked them all like I wasn't actively holding a coffin in my chest. Somewhere in the crowd, the head of HR avoided eye contact. My direct manager clinked his glass to mine and said, "You deserve this." Oh, he knew. Everyone knew. They had planned this, and they needed me smiling while it happened. And I smiled, because I wasn't done yet. They thought they were ending my story. They had no idea it was only the beginning. As the applause died down and the music shifted into a mellow string arrangement, I gripped the glass award tighter. My fingers were still trembling, but my face? My face was a masterpiece of calm. Years in corporate taught me one thing well: how to smile when you're bleeding. I stepped toward the microphone. I hadn't planned a long speech, just a moment to thank the team who had fought beside me for the Encorvia deal. Olivia, who slept on the office couch the night before the final proposal was due. Dev, who caught a clause in the draft that would have cost us $5 million. Even Ben, who stayed quiet when he disagreed, but stayed later when it mattered. They were the real reason this deal closed. I reached for the mic and tapped it gently. Nothing. I tapped again. Still nothing. I glanced to the sound booth. The tech there, a young guy named Cole who once helped me fix my laptop during a presentation meltdown, met my eyes for a millisecond, then looked away. Guiltily. The red light on the mic was off. It wasn't on mute. It had been powered down. Deliberately. A tight voice broke the silence behind me. And now, Please welcome to the stage our head of product integration, Mr. Clark Donner. There was no pause, no acknowledgement. Clark bounded up the steps, microphone in hand. His was working just fine, and launched into a flashy slideshow about Vision 2026. His smile was too wide, too enthusiastic, like he was grateful to be the next face everyone saw after mine. I was still standing on stage, gripping a silent mic, the crowd politely watching me not speak. They never meant for me to talk. This wasn't my moment. This was my exit. A woman in a navy pantsuit appeared beside me. Janine, HR director. Her face was tight with forced compassion, but she wouldn't meet my eyes either. She whispered, "Mia, come with me backstage." My heels echoed on the polished floor as I followed her behind the curtains, past the catering setup and the musicians tuning their instruments, into a narrow hallway that smelled like linen spray and old paint. She led me into a dim-lit side room, closed the door, and handed me a folder. "Effective immediately," she said softly. Inside, my termination documents, neatly typed, signed by Brennan Holt himself. Same date. Today. No explanation beyond organizational transition. "Your badge will be deactivated at midnight," she added, like she was reading off a script. "We've arranged a courier to deliver your personal items from your desk. You won't need to return to the office." I blinked. "But, She cut me off gently. "It's already processed, Mia." She didn't look surprised. She didn't look sorry. I had been erased, and this was the cleanup. My mouth opened to speak, not to beg, never that, but to demand an explanation. A meeting. Anything. But she was already walking away. The door clicked behind her. I stood in that room with the glass award still in my hand, dismissed like a liability. Like a threat. They hadn't just fired me. They'd staged it. Silenced me. Paraded me out like a hero, only to make my fall louder by contrast. And worst of all, they'd done it in a way that no one else noticed. The kind of betrayal that doesn't show up in photos or post-event write-ups. A silent erasure. But I was still standing, and I hadn't made my last move yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tried. I really did. I changed into pajamas I couldn't remember buying, climbed under the duvet, turned my phone off, on, off again. But my body was a fist, clenched tight with rage and humiliation. My trophy sat on the nightstand like a joke. For excellence. Yeah, excellent enough to fire. By 1:27 a.m., I gave up. I threw on an old coat over my dress and drove. I didn't know where I was headed until I crossed the river and saw it. The East Bridge. God, how many times had I driven past it, eyes full of fire and ambition. It was my private altar. Whenever I felt stuck or overwhelmed, I'd come here. Sometimes just to sit, to think, to remember why I kept pushing. Tonight, the bridge looked different. Not smaller, not sadder, just honest. I pulled over. The city glowed behind me like a silent accusation. In front of me, water, darkness, wind. I gripped the railing and stared down. 10 years of birthdays missed, dinners canceled, messages left on read. I told myself it was just temporary, that once I made it, I'd make it all up to everyone. But now? Now I was a discarded name tag and a cardboard box someone else would pack. It wasn't because I failed. I knew that now. They didn't get rid of me because I wasn't good enough. They got rid of me because I was too good. Because I signed the deal. Because after years of saying I was a great team player, I finally became the star. And that made me a threat. I wasn't a whisper behind the curtain anymore. I was center stage. And they cut the mic. I slid down the railing and sat on the cold concrete, head against my knees. My breath fogged the air. My chest ached in that deep, quiet way grief does when there's no one left to witness it. Then, for some reason, I thought about the contract. The Incorvia deal. Not the one they fired me from. The one I closed. The deal that brought $63 million into Virexa Global. I pulled out my phone, fingers numb, and opened the PDF I had saved weeks ago on instinct. My copy. Not the sanitized version. I scrolled past the formalities, through the payment structure, the timelines, and then I saw it. Clause 17B. Representation continuity. In the event of a material change in primary account management, client reserves the right to halt or reassign fund disbursement until the previously agreed-upon party is present during final confirmation. I blinked. Then I read it again. And again. It meant they couldn't receive the funds, not unless I was present. I was listed, by name, as the primary executor of agreement. Encorvia had insisted on it. They wanted continuity, trust, familiarity. They didn't trust the company, they trusted me. I stared at that clause, heart-pounding. They had fired the one person required to finalize the transaction, and unless they realized their mistake, or I intervened, $63 million would be on pause. They thought they had buried me quietly, but they had no idea what they just buried with me. I stood up slowly, adrenaline washing over my bones. They wanted to erase me? Fine. Let's see how they handle becoming invisible to $63 million. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. When I got home from the bridge, I walked straight to the cabinet where I kept everything the company had ever tried to make me forget. Folders, USBs, binders labeled in my own handwriting. I was the kind of employee they loved until they didn't. The one who backed everything up twice and printed things others didn't even read. I dug out the black binder, the one with the gold sticker on the side that read Encorvia, Final. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. There it was, the latest version of the contract, dated, initialed, executed. I turned to the clause that had etched itself into my brain hours ago. Clause 17B, Representation Continuity. In the event of a material change in primary account management prior to full activation, Encorvia reserves the right to terminate the agreement or delay payment until the reinstatement of the originally contracted party or an agreed-upon equivalent. Said party is defined herein as Mia Caldwell, Strategic Account Director. I didn't just oversee the deal. I was the deal. I remembered the negotiation clearly. Encorvia had been skittish after being burned by another firm. They wanted consistency. They didn't trust faceless firms anymore. They trusted people. And I had fought hard to build that trust. Months of dinners, Zoom calls, late-night clarifications, soft laughs over bad coffee. With them, I wasn't just a name and a job title. I was the only reason they said yes, and I knew it. So I added that clause. I had drafted the language late one night when the legal team had gone home. I sent it directly to Encorvia's general counsel and CC'd our own legal with a note. For continuity and client confidence. Nobody questioned it. Nobody read it. They had no idea I was locking myself into the core of the deal. Now, their oversight was my leverage, and it wasn't just symbolic, it was literal. I reached into another file. A blue folder with my email printouts and digital correspondence. Every approval, every revision, every confirmation with Encorvia's VP of Business Relations. My initials. My timestamps. The company had celebrated me for 15 minutes, then erased me in 15 seconds. And in doing so, they handed me the only thing they ever truly valued, the power to stop them from getting what they wanted. I wasn't just the architect, I was the key. And they fired me without realizing I still held the door shut. I sat back in my chair, the room dim except for the lamplight. They thought they'd embarrassed me, but they'd underestimated me. I wasn't holding on to a second chance. I was holding the future of a $63 million deal, and I had every receipt. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, the black binder open in front of me, every page illuminated by a single overhead light. My fingers moved slowly, tracing the printed words of Clause 17B as if they might disappear if I blinked. I hadn't just been part of the deal, I had woven myself into it. Not metaphorically, literally, legally. And the thought kept circling like a hawk overhead. They had no idea. They had fired me, erased me, while holding a contract they didn't even bother to read thoroughly. They didn't realize the final clause had my fingerprints all over it, that my presence wasn't optional, it was binding. I stared at Mike Turney's name on my phone for several minutes. My thumb hovered over the screen. Calling him wasn't part of any plan. I hadn't even thought through what I'd say. But there was something in me, maybe rage, maybe instinct, that refused to let this end in silence. I pressed dial. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was just about to hang up when his voice answered, low and even. Mia? He said it like he already knew. I hope I didn't wake you, I said, my voice rough from too many hours of holding back tears. No, he replied simply. I was expecting your call. That stopped me for a moment. You were? I got wind of something earlier, he said. A contact in your legal team messaged one of ours. Told us you were no longer with Virexa, that the account was being reassigned. His voice hardened. I didn't believe it, not without hearing it from you. My stomach flipped, but not from fear, from fury. It's true, I said. They let me go. At the ceremony, after the trophy, before I could speak. There was a pause. I heard a chair creak on his end, papers rustling, the unmistakable tension of a man who had just stopped everything he was doing. You're kidding. I wish I was. I took a breath. But here's the part they didn't expect. I kept everything, every version, every revision, every clause, including 17B. Another pause, longer this time. You have the full contract? I have the signed version, and the one I submitted, the one they used. His voice dropped to a thoughtful, heavier tone. Clause 17B. That's the continuity clause, right? About primary account representation? Yes, I said, and it names me, specifically, not the role, me. Mia Caldwell, Strategic Account Director. If I'm not managing the account, Encorvia reserves the right to pause or terminate. Mike exhaled slowly. I remember now, he said. Our legal insisted on that clause after the last vendor burned us. We needed stability. You were the reason we agreed to the full contract structure. I remember the conversation clearly. I could hear his chair roll back. More rustling, possibly him reaching for his own copy. I didn't sign a contract with that company, Mia, he continued. I signed it with you. You were the one who built the relationship, guided the process, answered our calls at 10 p.m., and rewrote the structure when our CFO pushed back. This deal lives and dies with your name on it. My throat tightened. I blinked fast. Not because I was weak, but because I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. You're not going to like what they're trying to do, he added, voice clipped with controlled annoyance. But I'll make this clear. They don't get the money unless I sign the release, and I'm not signing anything until I talk to you. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just sympathy. This wasn't a polite callback to preserve appearances. This was support, real, strategic, unshakable. I want to meet, he said. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. my office. Bring everything. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I will. I'll bring the full contract, correspondence, even the original draft notes. Good, he said. Let's make sure this deal ends where it started, with you. We ended the call. No long goodbyes, no theatrics, just certainty. I sat back in my chair, staring at the binder in front of me like it was a weapon I hadn't realized I carried. Because that's exactly what it was. Not just proof of what I'd done, but protection against what they thought they could do. They tried to replace me with applause and silence. But what they didn't know, couldn't know, was that I never needed a stage to matter. I only needed the truth. And the truth was now on paper, in my bag, heading into a boardroom they thought they controlled. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be walking in as a fired employee. I'd be walking in as the only one who could save a $63 million contract they thought was already theirs. And this time? They'd hear me loud and clear. 2 weeks after the call with Mike, after the documents were reviewed, the deal reevaluated, and Virexa publicly embarrassed. I did something I never imagined I'd do. I started my own company. No grand plan, no seed funding, no silent investors hiding behind frosted glass. Just me, a laptop, and a quiet rage that had finally transformed into clarity. I named it Vrancy, after my grandmother, Vera Crandall, who used to say, "If you don't see a door, build the damn wall and make one yourself." She raised me. She survived 2 wars, a bankruptcy, and the death of her husband without ever folding in on herself. Every time I hesitated in life, I could hear her voice in my head. You were not born to sit quietly in someone else's legacy, write your own. So I did. I bought the domain, Vrancy.co clean, minimal. It didn't need to scream. It just needed to exist. I sat at my kitchen table again, the same table where I'd once collapsed after 14-hour days, where I once stared at a pink slip while holding a glass award. This time, I wasn't collapsing. I was designing. The structure came first: strategic partnerships, high-integrity client relations, brand continuity consulting. Everything I had done in silence for other companies, but now, openly, and for the right ones. The ones who valued people as much as numbers. Next came the pitch deck. I kept it simple, honest. Slide 1 said, "We don't build relationships, we protect them." By slide 7, it was clear. Vrancy wasn't a typical agency. It was a shield for clients who had been misled, mishandled, or misunderstood. And then, with a shaky breath and a cup of coffee in hand, I opened LinkedIn. I didn't post a revenge story. I didn't name names. I simply wrote, "Today, I'm proud to launch Vrancy, a consultancy rooted in integrity, built from experience, and dedicated to strategic clarity. This is for the companies who believe relationships still matter, and the people behind the numbers still count. We're small, we're new, but we are ready. If you know, you know." I hit publish and closed my laptop. 5 minutes later, I got a message from Amira, our former marketing lead. She had been the only one to openly call out our old CEO's missteps in team meetings, always followed by a nervous laugh. Her message read, "Are you hiring, or do I just show up with coffee and loyalty?" Then, Ravi, one of our sharpest analysts, the one who quietly ran the risk models that made half our decisions look smarter than they actually were, messaged, "I read clause 17b, you genius. If you'll have me, I'll bring the data." I hadn't even made an offer, and suddenly I had a team. No office, no payroll yet, no mahogany desks or branded notebooks, just a vision, and people who believed in it. By day 3, I had 3 client inquiries, one from a mid-size biotech firm, another from a logistics startup, and one, the boldest, from a Fortune 100 VP who simply said, "I saw what happened. We'd like to talk." I stared at my inbox as the messages piled in, not out of disbelief, but out of something purer, readiness. I didn't have a corner office, but I had something better, a name, a team, and a fire that wasn't burning out. It was just getting started. Meanwhile, at Virexa Global, things were unraveling. It started as a small glitch. Just one client, a boutique investment firm out of Toronto, reported trouble accessing their analytics dashboard. The charts weren't loading, the filters were off. Their daily reports, which usually hit inboxes at 7:01 a.m. sharp, never arrived. By noon, 3 more clients had reported similar issues. By 3 p.m., the complaints weren't about data delays anymore. Users couldn't log in at all. At 4:17 p.m., the internal help desk ticket read, "Urgent. Client dashboards inaccessible across 4 major accounts. All systems showing green in admin. Root cause unknown." That's when the panic set in. Because green shouldn't mean broken. I had built those dashboards. Every visual, every logic chain, every conditional data set that made them hum quietly in the background like a well-tuned machine. I hadn't done it with flashy presentations or long meetings. I had done it with care, with craft. The kind you only learn when you build something from the ground up, layer by layer, not just plug and play. And now, without me, it was all stalling. The engineers tried patching the system, but the patches didn't stick. The data pipeline was intact, but the rendered outputs were chaotic. KPIs scrambled, client branding mismatched. One firm's monthly report even showed another company's data entirely. Internal messages buzzed like hornets. Does anyone have Mia's backend logic maps? Where's the source file for the dynamic integration module? Wait, didn't she have a custom bypass for client thresholds? They didn't have the answers, because no one had asked when I was still there. At 5:30 p.m., a meeting was called. Emergency session. Leadership. Product. It. One by one, they admitted it out loud. Mia was the only one who knew how this worked. No documentation could capture the nuance. No handover meeting could replicate years of pattern recognition and instinct. Still, they tried to maintain calm. The CEO, Brennan Holt, was in denial. "We'll fix it," he said flatly. "We have a capable team." But outside the glass boardroom, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. And they weren't just support tickets anymore. They were client demands. Calls from major accounts, furious about delays, broken access, and scrambled data. One voice, recorded in a panicked Slack call, said, "This whole system worked perfectly until you cut the person who built it. Bring her back, or we'll walk." By the end of the day, 5 clients had directly named me, not the company. Me. They weren't just mad, they were making it clear. I wasn't optional. I wasn't background noise. I was the system's voice, its architect, its conscience. And I had left, quietly, with no threats, no sabotage. But the silence I left behind? It was screaming now. And Brennan still didn't realize. They hadn't just fired an employee. They'd cut out the heart and expected the body to function. But the heart always knows when it's gone. And now, so did the clients. The message came late one night, in the form of an encrypted email with no subject line. At first, I thought it was spam, but when I opened it, I recognized the name instantly. Jarek Lin, senior programmer, ex-Virexa, quiet genius, terrible in meetings, loyal in ways you only learn after years in the trenches. He left the company 6 months before I did, after clashing with management over budget cuts to the data infrastructure. He once told me, "They think architecture is about code. It's about consequence." His message was brief. I still have access. I built a kill switch during the old load balancer migration. I never used it, never planned to, but it still works. 1 click, total server wipe. You just say the word. I stared at it for a long time. The temptation was sharp, immediate. After everything they'd done, the erasure, the betrayal, the humiliation, part of me wanted to say yes. Just once. Let them feel the ground fall out from under them. Let the databases crash. Let the dashboards crumble like they'd crumbled me. But then I thought of my name, Vrancy, my grandmother's legacy, my own. And I typed back, "Don't. I want to win clean. I want them to lose because of who they are, not because of anything I did. Thank you for telling me, but don't touch a thing." He replied with a single sentence. "Then you're already stronger than them." I closed my laptop and went to sleep with a clean conscience. But the next morning, the universe, or maybe karma, started writing its own lines. Because even without sabotage, Virexa began to collapse. They rolled out a software update to stabilize the interface, a rushed patch built by engineers who didn't understand the system's foundation. And just like that, the cracks began to widen. Client dashboards began to freeze mid-session. Forecast models spat out impossible projections, double-digit growth in sectors that were flatlining. One report showed a client's competitors' data side by side with their own. Then came the emails. From vendors, from stakeholders, from compliance auditors. One thread simply read, "What the hell is happening?" None of it was my doing. I hadn't lifted a finger. Their system was failing under the weight of its own ignorance. The things they never documented, the nuances they overlooked, the warnings they dismissed. I hadn't broken anything. They had. They had pressed their own self-destruct button, disguised as a hotfix, disguised as confidence, disguised as competence. And I was watching, not with malice, but with clarity. Because while they stumbled and patched and panicked, Vrancy was growing. My team was building tools, slowly, deliberately, transparently. Our first client had already signed. 2 more were in legal. Amira was running campaigns. Ravi was designing metrics dashboards that didn't just look good, but told the truth. And the truth was this: I didn't need to sabotage the old world. It was collapsing just fine on its own, and I was already building something better. The final blow came quietly. No headlines, no breaking news, just a signature. One inked in calm, confident strokes on a white table in a small co-working space on the east side of the city. Mike Turney sat across from me, sleeves rolled up, expression unreadable. "Let's make this official," he said. And with one sweep of a pen, Encorvia Tech, the $63 million contract that once defined my career at Virexa, became Vrancy's first cornerstone client. We didn't celebrate, There was no champagne, no fake applause, just a quiet exchange of nods between three people who knew what it took to rebuild something after you've been erased. But across town, in a boardroom lined with glass and fading credibility, things were anything but quiet. Virexa Global's structure collapsed within days. First, the news broke that Incorvia had terminated their contract. But what hurt more wasn't just the loss. It was the public nature of the shift. Industry insiders whispered, they didn't just lose the deal, they lost it to their own former employee. Then the main investor pulled out. A hedge fund that had pumped millions into Virexa's tech infrastructure suddenly went silent, pulling liquidity and retracting public endorsements. Strategic misalignment, the statement read. But everyone knew the truth. Investors don't like incompetence, and they hate humiliation. Executives started resigning, first one, then another, then the CFO. The CEO, Brennan Holt, tried to hold the center, but it was too late. He'd underestimated me, not just once, but over and over again. His final public statement was a tone-deaf platitude about rebuilding with focus and resilience. He was gone 2 weeks later. And me? I was in a co-working space the size of Virexa's old janitor closet, sitting beside Amira and Ravi, eating takeout noodles, and signing 3 new client contracts in a single afternoon. No marketing team, no assistants, no perks, just grit, clarity, and a vision no one else could fake. We worked on folding tables. We held meetings on Zoom. We designed logos in Canva and tracked leads in shared Google Sheets, but we were alive, we were free. Every client who reached out didn't ask about size or legacy. They asked, are you the woman who brought Virexa to its knees and then built something better? I didn't correct them, because they needed to know. No one saved me. No one handed me a lifeline. I clawed my way back with bare hands and receipts. I wasn't rescued. I resurrected. The ballroom at the leadership conference was warm with low lighting and quiet power. Rows of women, founders, engineers, analysts, and dreamers, sat in silence as I stepped onto the stage. I took the microphone, not as the underdog or the upstart, but as the architect of my own story. My name is Mia Caldwell, I began, steady and calm. And I wasn't fired because I failed. I was fired because I succeeded. There was no dramatic pause, just the truth. I was fired at the height of my career, right after signing the biggest contract in my company's history. I didn't make a mistake. I didn't violate policy. I was simply too visible, too necessary, too much. I looked out at the faces watching me. Some nodded, some didn't move, but all of them were listening. And I didn't retaliate. I didn't burn the place down. I didn't write think pieces or tweet thread revenge fantasies. I smiled faintly. I just built a new house, quietly, brick by brick. There was a ripple through the room, a silent recognition. Some had done the same. Others were still waiting for the courage. I built a company not out of anger, but clarity. Not out of vengeance, but value. And when the people who underestimated me started to watch it rise, they realized I wasn't trying to take back a seat. I paused. I was building the table. The applause started soft, like a question, then swelled into something I could feel in my ribs. Afterward, I stepped down, heart pounding, not from fear, from something like peace. I stood by the water table when I heard a voice behind me. Mia? I turned. A young woman stood there, maybe 25, in a blazer a little too big for her shoulders. Her eyes were nervous but shining. You probably don't remember me, she said quickly. I was your intern, summer after my second year. I used to bring you coffee and sit in on those late proposal meetings. I blinked, surprised, not because I didn't remember her, but because she was here. Carly, I said, you asked more questions than anyone else in the room. She laughed, blushing. That's me. We stood there a moment. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a tiny notebook, hesitated, and said, Do you need a new assistant? The question landed with all the weight of what it really meant. Can I stand next to you now? Can I build something with you instead of waiting for someone else to hand it to me? I tilted my head, smiled, and said, Maybe. She beamed, because the answer wasn't a no. And more importantly, the decision was mine. No longer was I fighting for a place at someone else's table. I was building one where others could stand beside me, not behind me. And this time, I wasn't just part of the story. I was the story.